My trauma came from getting a lot of power as a police officer and not having the skill set to control that power effectively. When law enforcement officers encounter trauma, coupled with moral injury, coupled with a missing resilient skill set, and then they get into risky times where things don't feel good, they look for another risky thing to stop it. To find that endorphin rush that you found in your last Code 3 run with your lights and sirens on.
No one sees like the trauma and the stuff that you guys experience. Do you think that is what's responsible for the high level of suicide in this industry?
A recent research study said that in a 20-year career, 1 in 6 officers has thought about dying by suicide.
What is law enforcement agencies doing to help with that?
They're doing a lot. Are they doing enough? No. Can they do enough? I don't know. To date, we've trained 250,000 community members on how to cooperate with authority figures to build their own authority set. We have trained 28,000 police officers to date on a skill set that we call procedural fairness. That helps to kind of combine with dealing with people in times of conflict and crisis. So I study this idea of how can we get along and how can we see the good in each other when really the perception right off the bat is that there's not very much good.
Jason, welcome to Bear It All with Linnsey. Thank you so much. We've been going back and forth trying to get you on the podcast.
The biggest reason I wanted to be on the podcast was to say that I was on a podcast and I got to sit in a pink chair.
Hell yes. I knew it. That's it. I love it. So am I the first podcast that has the pink chairs?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So I get to hear about your story. You sent me a bio. I read your bio, but I want to hear your story.
So I'm from New York City, New York. I grew up there until the age of 13.
Okay.
And then I had a really weird mix-up where I was actually arrested for attempted murder. I knocked the UPS man out cold with a brick. But I wasn't trying to knock him out with a brick. I was trying to break windows with
13?
bricks at 13.
Shit.
And so I got arrested. The charges weren't filed. My mom decided she had to get me out of there. She had divorced my dad. So she married probably the first person she could. She married a jazz musician that she met on a cruise ship, a guy named Magic John. And next thing you know, this guy Magic John is raising me in Glendale, California. So made the move out there, found the game of football, played football at high school, at Cerritos Junior College. And then I played football on a Division I scholarship to play at the University of South Florida.
Okay.
And had some fun playing football. I thought about the NFL, but I definitely wasn't good enough. And so there was no shot there. Packed up, went back across the country to California. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I quickly became an EMT. I started working on one of the transport ambulances for the LA County Fire Department.
Okay.
Started bouncing at nightclubs and then started coaching football at Woodrow Wilson High School. And that brought me into a bar. And I know it sounds weird, but football coaches, after they're done coaching, sometimes they go into a bar, have a beer or whatever. So I did that. And me and my really good friend, I actually call my cousin, one night we walked into a bar late at night and we ended up getting into a bar fight. Well, he didn't, I did. The bar fight that I got into happened to be with one of the most well-respected off-duty gang sergeants for the city of Long Beach. He was a Long Beach police sergeant for the gang unit. And
you picked the fight?
No, I think he picked the fight. It's a longer story, but he picked the fight.
Oh wow.
And I don't want to tell you who won the fight, but like when he picked me up off the ground after the fight because he whipped my butt, he mentored me through the process of becoming a cop.
There you go. I was going to say, don't tell me who won, but tell me who didn't win. No,
that's right. Yeah, and he ended up helping me out, and an amazing human named Don D.C. Campbell, just a great guy.
What a beginning of a friendship.
Yeah, and the end of our partnership was really, really sad because in 2019 he died by suicide. So to think about the different aspects of a life is just crazy because such a well-respected, amazing human being, and he did great things. But I became a cop, and I worked in law enforcement for about 17 years, and I worked primarily gang and violent crime suppression, like on a street crimes unit.
You said
in
LA?
Long Beach.
Oh, Long Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Got into some crazy, use of force situations and then, dealt with those in a very weird way and didn't really know how to recover from my trauma. And because there were some traumatic instances in the first few years. And that led me down some weird paths, which we can talk about later. But I got out of law enforcement in January of 2022. And I left kicking and screaming. Like I really wanted to stay. But
And how many years was that total that you did?
About 17.
About 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I left because I got opportunities to work with really cool national organizations like the New York Post and Fox News. And I got to work with some major law enforcement entities like Lexipol and the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and doing consulting work for them and kind of helping them to structure what it takes for a police officer and a community member to get along during times of conflict and crisis. So if we get into an argument and we both see each other as the opposition, what's going to happen? Yeah, we're going to pull each other's hair out, right? Well, you're not going to pull my hair out, but right, but you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. We're gonna have some beef, and so I studied that for years. My master's degree is in interpersonal communication. My bachelor's degree is in that stuff. So I studied this idea of how can we get along and how can we see the good in each other when really the perception right off the bat is that there's not very much good. So ultimately, when I got into this consulting thing, I became this, like, I guess, a leadership coach, right? And it's kind of hard to define what a leadership coach does. It kind of almost sounds like a scam, right? It's kind of hard to think about, like, what is this leadership coach idea? But ultimately, I help people refine their greatness and work to get 2% better every day the right way. And I give them systems on how they can do that. And
that's what you do today?
That's what I do for a living now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I own Chapter 2 Consulting and run a nonprofit organization called Why'd You Stop Me?
And tell me about this name. Where did that come from?
So in 2011, I had just gotten what I consider well. And I walked into a high school classroom, and I'd never thought I would speak to kids. It just wasn't my thing. I was always this hard charging cop, like guns, drugs, bad guys.
Right.
Like look cool in your uniform and bang open people's doors at 4 a.m. and catch a bag. That was my thing, like the TV show.
Makes sense. Right. For sure.
Not every cop is that cool, but I tried to be that.
But you were that cool.
I thought I was that cool, right? Like I thought I could be that cool, right?
Sure.
Usually the coolest people are the least cool people. So,
oh my God. I was telling my daughter that. I'm like, no, the ones that you think are cool are not the fucking cool ones. They're going to be the broke, lame ones when they're older. Go for the ones that don't look cool because they'll be successful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm sitting here and I was inside of my office trying to figure out what to do. And I was inside my office trying to figure out what to do because the largest black gang in the city of Long Beach, a gang called the Insane Crips, I had a run-in with them a few years prior. And because of my over-aggressive policing style, they were like, hey, you know what? We're done with you. And there was a rumor, allegations that I was going to be ambushed and killed with my team that Friday night. And so my sergeant—
Who said they were done with you?
The gang members. So
How did they get to say we're done with you?
Okay, so if we back up into 2009, I got into a undercover drug deal that went terribly bad.
Okay, got it.
And that guy was one of the heads.
They had it out for you.
Kind of, sort of.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so ultimately, my boss had taken me off the streets. I'm sitting in my office. I'm trying to figure out what to do, right? Usually when a cop is getting paid to do nothing, that's probably a sign that something should change, whatever it is. And that's what I was doing. I was getting paid. I couldn't go on the streets because of safety issues and because I was kind of aggressive. And so I was coming out of that phase. But ultimately, my phone rang. And when my phone rang, the assistant principal of a school in Long Beach, he's on the other side of the phone, and he says, hey, Jay, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing much. And he said, okay, I want you to come to the school and talk to these kids. They have some problems with the police, and they could use your help. And at that moment, the saddest part back then in 2011 was I told him, I don't talk to kids. I don't like humans. I'm a police officer who's supposed to serve people, and I just told a guy who works at a school that I don't like humans. Now, at that time, that guy was a friend of mine. He had played football with me at Cerritos College. So I knew him good enough to kind of just be frank with him, but I was going through it. And so he said, well, what are you doing right this second? And I looked around the office and I couldn't do anything. And I was like, I guess I'm doing nothing. And he said, cool, then come speak to the kids. And I was like, all right, let me check with my boss. So I have to, this grown man wears a police uniform, big, strong, thinks he's smart, whole thing. I have to call my boss and say, hi, boss, can I leave my office to go speak to some kids? Because my boss was scared if I left the office that I would cuss somebody out or get in trouble or whatever, right? And my boss said, yeah, that's a good idea. Put a suit on and bring a partner You don't drive. He drives. No police action, and go talk to those kids. Now, you tell this powerful type A person all of those rules, and it's like, what? Like, that was the craziest feeling. So what did I do? The next day, I put a suit on. I took my partner. I went to the school. I spoke to the group of kids, and I spoke to them for about an hour. And in about a couple minutes into it, a kid asked me a question, and you tell me what you think about this question. The question was, how come you don't just shoot the gun out of their hand? Like, hey, cop, when you guys get in a shooting, how come you guys can't just shoot the guns out of their hand? And that's a thought that a lot of people kind of have. So, I mean, that thought right there is an incredible thought. What do you think about that? Should cops just shoot the guns out of people's hands?
I mean, I have no fucking clue if that could happen, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, right? Because in the movies, that's what happens. And so in the movies, cops are able to shoot guns out of people's hands. But in real life, a bullet is a deadly object.
Right.
You're using it to go into the person that it needs to go into because there's no other level of force that works. So this level of force is the lowest level of force effective at that time to use. But if I shot at your hand and I missed, where would the bullet go? Who knows?
Right, right.
Right? And so this kid asked me this question. And I didn't know how to answer it, but I realized that for the first time ever, when somebody said some dumb shit, I didn't respond negatively. There was no microaggression whatsoever. There was no anything. I was just cool. I was like, hey, you probably don't know the answer to that, do you? And he's like, no. And I said, let's do this. And I gave him a dry erase marker, dry eraser off the dry erase board. And I told him, this is going to be the bullet that's going to come out of the gun that's your hand. No real weapons. And all I want you to do is I want you to take this bullet and I want you to throw it at my hand and knock the fake gun out of my hand. So you're going to aim your bullet at my hand. And he stood, I mean, probably a little bit further than we are, right? Not too far away. And I said, all right, ready, go. And I went like this and I moved my arms. And when I moved my arms, he threw it and he missed. And I said, where does the bullet go now? And he goes, I don't know. I said, it could go into a barbershop and kill a 4-year-old. And that's what happened about 2 weeks ago in Long Beach during that time of the story. 2 weeks prior, a stray bullet, not from a cop's gun, but from somebody else's gun, had gone into a barbershop and killed a kid, a 4-year-old kid that was getting a haircut. Because bullets are dangerous, right? And I said, okay, so let's do this. That was my hand. Now what I want you to do is I want you to throw it at my chest. So that's going to be the bullet. It's going to go into my chest. And I gave him the dry eraser. And I said, let's go. And he took it and I went like this and I said, go. And he hit me and boom, hit my chest and fell down. And I said, where'd the bullet go? He goes, into your chest. I said, which is bigger, my arm or my chest? And he's like, your chest. I said, yeah. So if the bullet goes left or right and we're aiming at the center of my chest, it still goes where? They're like, into your chest. I said, we call that center mass. Cops aim for center mass because they can't afford to have the bullet miss. God forbid they have to use a bullet, right?
Right.
But if they have to, that's what they aim for, center mass, because it allows for, people to make mistakes or, small mistakes in positioning. So then after all that was done, at about the end of an hour, a kid stood up in the back of the room. And in Long Beach, they call me Tiny. That's a nickname I got. Now I'm like 6'4". I don't know.
I was going to say
right?
tiny.
Like depending on the meal, I'm either 300 pounds or I'm not, right? Like there. So,
sure.
So, a kid stood up in the back of the class. He looked at me and he said, hey, Tiny, you remember me? And I looked at him and I'm like, nah, I don't. And he said, 2 years ago, you arrested me with a gun in my waistband. And I said, just like this, I think this was really important for me to cover right off the bat. I was like, hey, bro, you don't have a gun on you right now, do you? Like, I thought that was critical. He's like, nah, I don't. I said, all right, what's going on? He goes, well, from that day when you arrested me until today, I got to tell you something I've been thinking. And I'm like, go ahead. He's like, that day when you arrested me, it was raining out. It was across the street from this school, and I was holding the hand of my first girlfriend. I was wearing clothes my mom bought me with her last money, and I was proud to go on a date with her. And you and your homeboys got out of the car, and you pointed guns at me, and you made me get down on my hands and knees. You made me crawl to you. And then you dropped your knee in my back. One of your homeboys handcuffed me and swept me away, and I haven't seen you since. And he says, from that day until today, every morning when I woke up, the first thing I thought about doing was hurting you. And he said, but today's the first day that I could tell you, I'll never hurt you.
That's wild.
He said, today's the first day I could tell you that I actually understand why you do what you do. Because before today, for the last 2 years, I thought that all white cops did in my neighborhood was stop and arrest black people for no reason. He said, but the scenarios you went over with us today in this room and the explanations you gave, they actually made sense to me. Then one of the weirdest things I heard you say was, if everybody in the neighborhood is black, who are you supposed to arrest? And it's crazy to think about all those different dynamics and all those different things and to sit here and process that. That's not always the case. Black people don't always get arrested because there's just a lot of black people to make a selection from. That's not the way that works. But when a police officer makes an arrest, most of the time, they're not saying, oh, let me go arrest the black person versus the white person. Most of the time, that's not the case. If that was the case, they wouldn't be very successful. It just wouldn't work out too well. Well, ultimately, I was blown away by this kid saying that. And when he said, I'll never hurt you, it made me feel a sense of safety I had never felt before, because I felt like I had backup that wasn't in a police uniform. And I never felt that way. I never felt like my community was my backup. But ultimately, what I teach now with my organization is there's a lot more community members than there are cops. And if you have to get on the radio to ask for help, that's because the person that's helping you is so far away that they have to use a radio to hear you. The person that's your backup is the person that's either going to fight you or not. The person that's your backup is the person across the street. The person that's your backup is the person that raised the person that you're encountering.
Right.
That's your backup. You're raising young people to be amazing leaders. Like, you're sitting here going, hey, this is what it is. This is how we do things. This is how we do that. This is how right? Like, those things are important. But the people that I encountered a lot in my police uniform, they didn't have the parenting that we're offering our children.
Of course not.
They didn't have that.
Of course not. They're a product of their environment.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of the times. And so what can I do differently? And when he said that, I just shut my mouth and I was almost physically and emotionally paralyzed. And he said, there's 3 things I want to tell you about that stop. And I've been waiting to tell you these 3 things. And I said, okay, go ahead. He said, the first thing I want you to know is I was raised never be disrespected in front of a woman. You see, I was holding the hand of my first girlfriend at the age of 15. And as you were screaming orders at me, my mom walked out from across the street and watched her son and 4 big, bald, white cops point guns at her son. And then you made me get down on my hands and knees in the clothes that she just bought me with the last money she had. And then you dropped your knee on my back, and then you handcuffed me. And he said, I was raised never to be disrespected in front of a woman. Weren't you raised that way? And then he went on to question 2, and he said, hey, here's the second question I got for you. See, I was arrested, and a police officer went over to my mom after the arrest and said, your son's going to jail for having a gun. He'll call you in a couple hours. See, I heard that through the crack in the window as I sat in the back seat of the car handcuffed. And I heard it, and then I watched the police officer walk in front of the police car to go to his car. And I heard my mom very loudly ask the officer for help. She said, excuse me, officer, excuse me, officer. And I saw the officer just stare my mom down like the piece of crap he thought she was, get in the car and drive away. And he came down that aisle in the classroom again, and for the second time, he said, my mom wanted to know more. He said, if all that happened to you, wouldn't your mom have a couple more questions? And the third thing he said, which was a very, very big one, was, hey, you know, my mom was watching this all go down. And my girl was across the street. And I was carrying a gun. I had a gun. But did you ever think about why I had a gun? Now, I thought I had thought about that back then. But he said, I had a gun because my big brother had just been shot and killed right across the street from the apartment complex where we were 3 months before you saw me. My baby sister's in the house with my mom. And I don't know if you've ever met him, Tiny, but I've never met my father. He walked down the aisle and he said, if all that happened to you, cop or not, wouldn't you be carrying a gun when you left the house? And he backed away and he looked at me and he said, Tiny, I thank you for your time. I'm done speaking with you. But you can't stop doing what you're doing. But in order for you to keep talking like this and keep doing what you're doing, you can't stop thinking for us. Because when you think for us, you're going to be safer. I appreciate your time. You can go now. And that kid kicked me out of the classroom. I walked out of the classroom with no clue what was going on. I have not seen that kid or said a word to that kid since. He is the leader of something, and I hope it's a great thing. But as I walked out, the assistant principal said, what's the name of your program? And I said, let's call it Guns, Drugs, and Bad Guys. And he said, Jason, you're at a school. I took pictures for this presentation. I'd like to put it on the school website, this new website thing we got. Guns, Drugs, and Bad Guys not going to work. I said, okay, well, and so my hamster up here, I tell people that I have this hamster up here that's supposed to have 4 legs, but it really has 3 legs, and he kind of gets caught in the wheel every once in a while. And he just started sprinting, and I said, they always want to know why they get stopped. Like their big questions were, why do you stop? Why do you do this? So let's call it, why'd you stop me? And so Why'd You Stop Me came around to be the nonprofit organization that we now run. To date, we've trained 250,000 community members on how to cooperate with authority figures to build their own authority set. And so we have trained 28,000 police officers to date on a skill set that we call procedural fairness. And that helps to kind of combine with dealing with people in times of conflict and crisis. And I can explain that to you if you want. But ultimately, that's how Why'd You Stop Me came to be. And now it's morphed. We used to think that Why'd You Stop Me was a question that police officers are asked by people. But I think Why'd You Stop Me is a question that we should start off by asking ourselves, because we stop ourselves from our own success more than anybody else does.
I always tell people, get out of your own way.
Right?
You're literally,
100%.
you are stopping yourself. Okay, I want to back up to something you said.
Okay.
So you talked about that guy that you fought in the bar killed himself. And we're talking about through all this, how the people are being arrested, being stopped, how they feel. But I know so many people in law enforcement, and back in the day, I was dating a cop, and I went with him to these trauma classes. And we would sit in these trauma classes, and all the first responders would tell their trauma stories. And I was like, okay, I fucking have trauma now.
Wow.
After being in this class, like this is a little more than, I don't know if I'm going to go again with you, because like
I've never seen a couples trauma class. That's good. Okay,
it was
that's
crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a couples. I just went with him. It was for officers.
And you just got the invite.
Yeah.
That's
I
interesting.
just went with him.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And so some of them had their wives with them.
Okay.
So there's probably half and half.
Okay.
And just shared stories of the trauma and all of that. It was a 8-week program. And, but my point is, like, hearing those stories, I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah. You know, just all this stuff, like some of the stories I couldn't even handle hearing. And so no one sees like the trauma and the stuff that you guys experience. Do you think that is what's responsible for the high level of suicide in this industry? I even think my sister, she is a correctional officer now. So not law enforcement, but similar.
But she's law enforcement inside of the facility?
Yeah, so I guess it is law enforcement. Yeah. And my sister is so amazing. Nothing negative at all. But I've definitely seen her harden up. Like, if that makes sense, over the years. Like, has got an outlook like there's so many pieces of shits in the world, when it's just because I think you see pieces of shits on a daily basis. Or everybody you come around.
Piece of shits.
You know what I mean?
Dynamic.
They're like murderers and pedophiles and like all these people that she's talking about, right? So I would call that a piece of shit. Like a pedophile, you're a piece of fucking shit. And so like she's dealing with them on a daily basis. And so it makes her like feel like everybody's that way. And I do feel like she struggles with depression now because of that. I can see it. And so, I mean, how often... how common is that in that industry? Because we're hearing about how everybody else is affected and how they're feeling about you, but like the actual officers in that situation, they're struggling just as hard.
Well, before we started the podcast, we were talking about how hurt people, right?
Right.
And I think that a police officer's decision-making is based off of how well he's been over the last 2 days, not how his trauma is going to impact him tomorrow. It's how well that officer is over the last 2 days. Well, if you're dealing with coming from incidents where you have to pull a dead baby out of a dumpster, which is something that I've had to do, or you have to pick up body parts along the side of the road, or somebody tries to kill you, or you get into a deadly force incident or whatever, those bits of trauma, oftentimes I describe them as bricks that you put into a backpack. You just keep carrying those bricks, even though you're putting more bricks into a backpack. You keep carrying it. It's heavier and heavier. And so now what ends up happening is you end up feeling, at least for me, in my times of crisis, I've ended up feeling like I was a burden on others because of the decisions that I had made that were made because I was a hurt person hurting a person.
Did you have children at this time?
No.
When you're in law enforcement? Okay.
During law enforcement, yes. But in my times so ultimately in 2010, I unfortunately tried to die by suicide on about a dozen occasions. And in those.
And how was it not successful? Did someone save you?
So
you don't have to get into extreme detail, but.
I mean, I'm here. If people get on a podcast and they want to get in detail, they shouldn't be on a podcast.
I know. Okay, right. See, that's how I am too. I tell people that about
don't come on a podcast.
Hey, but I'm like, you don't have to be, detailed, but you can if you want to.
Yeah. That's very caring and kind of you, but that's not why this works, right?
Right.
And in my business, we define, I'll tell you the answer to your question in a second, but we define leadership as someone who has a unique capacity to utilize humility and vulnerability to bring someone else to a place they wouldn't go without them.
Story of my life. That is exactly why my mug shots are all over social media.
100%. I just saw something in your stories of you today. You were walking down a beach, right? And you were talking about the bad decision and the bad choice and this and that, and how you now all of those things lead to the position of success. Like, I feel successful right now because I could sit in a pink seat and be on a podcast, right? Like that's one small, tiny version of success. There's way more to it, but I mean, I really am stoked about sitting in the pink seats. Yeah, absolutely. Kidding me? But when I was dealing with my trauma, and I can only speak for my trauma because I think it relates to some other trauma. My trauma came from getting a lot of power as a police officer or working in the fire service or as an EMT or as a first responder, getting a lot of power and not having the skill set to control that power effectively. And
that's wild. I've never heard it put that way.
And what ends up happening is I start telling people to stop, sit down, shut up, stop the car. And that wouldn't work in my personal life. So now I have to undo all that super powerful stuff, go home and be an equal to somebody. And I can't tell them to stop, shut up, shut your mouth, sit down, stop the car. And now I have to go backwards. Now I have to be somebody else at home. And then I have to go back to work and I have to be somebody else at work. Well, what ends up happening is I end up looking for bad decisions because what I want to do is I want to find the life I have at work, at home, or vice versa. Mostly it's the life, this fast hitting life that I have at work. So what do? I do risky things. I start gambling. I start, I could start cheating. I could start doing all of these different, all these different opportunities that you could have to find that endorphin rush that you found in your last Code 3 run with your lights and sirens on. Because you get addicted to that feeling. And when you're doing that, sometimes this idea of moral injury creeps into your head. And moral injury is when you injure the morals that you had before you were a cop by doing something you could do only because you have a badge and a gun. And it could be something as little as saying to somebody in the back seat, an arrestee in the back seat, "Hey, dummy, you're here because your mom raised you this way, huh?" Like something as small as that.
Right.
How big is that for the person in the backseat of the car?
I mean,
it's giant for the person in the backseat of the car. I just told his mom his mom was an idiot.
Right.
It's giant. It's like if I look at somebody who's experiencing drug addiction and I tell them they're a tweaker and then they've changed their life and 5 years later I look at them and go, "You're still a fucking tweaker." Well, how hard did that person work for 5 years to change their life? Very easy for me.
I mean, words are powerful.
Right? It's very easy for me to do that.
They
and
can
so
hurt,
what ends up happening is I think that when law enforcement officers encounter trauma coupled with moral injury, coupled with a missing resilient skill set, and then they get into risky times where things don't feel good, they look for another risky thing to stop it. And that risky thing to stop it is an unfortunate permanent decision based off of a set of temporary emotions, which looks like suicide. And I believe that has a lot to do with law enforcement suicide. And when we think about law enforcement suicide, it's like most suicide. When people are having suicidal ideations, they're trying to escape something because one thing or a series of things happen and they can't get over those things. And that's how suicide occurs. And so when we get into law enforcement suicide, and I unfortunately have been very impacted by law enforcement suicide. In my last 6 years, 4 of my partners died by suicide in the same agency. And I've known at least 50 police officers that have died by suicide. And so when it comes to and I've trained some of them before they've died. And when it comes to
that's crazy. That is a high number. I know one person that killed herself. That is such a high number. The way you explained that was so wild, because I have a lot of law enforcement friends, and I have to admit that the men are very, very, they cheat. Most of them. Most of the male law enforcement friends I have, no judgment, but they all cheat on their wives. They just do.
Most.
No, a lot.
Let's go with most,
okay,
right?
I'd say most that I know do. They do. And not all, but that was the best explanation right there of why.
And it's not always that. It could be something else. It could be porn. It could be, a lot of different things, right? And but
they're chasing something. They're chasing something.
And I have been that person that's chased that stuff. So I know firsthand what that's like, what that's about.
I used to be the exact same way. I chased that shit. I would have 6 fucking boyfriends. Mm-hmm. I was horrific.
Yeah. So it's all of those kinds of things that you sit there. And obviously, like I tell people, I was on a podcast for alcohol recovery. And when they asked me to be on the podcast, they really just, it didn't fit what I normally do. Right. But I was like, I don't know what I normally do. And so I told him that. I said, what do you mean fit what you normally do? Like, I don't fit in a box anywhere. I sit here, I think about all that stuff. And one of the questions that got asked of me is, well, what's your addiction? And I realized that I'm an addicted a-hole. Like, I am an addict. I feel powerful in being an a-hole. And I have to literally use my own 12-step version for me to make sure that I do not relapse. Like, I could smooth in a heartbeat look at somebody that does something really dumb at that moment and literally say, no, you're not the dumb one. You're dumb. Your mom's dumb. Your son's an idiot. Like, I could just blow them up, like just ruin them just with my words. I don't now. I've gotten all the skills I need to not have to be able to do that. But I think it's an addiction like any addiction. Drugs, alcohol, food, whatever it is, that those addictions, they bring you to a place that you think you can't go without it. And so you're like, I want to go to that place. Like, that's the place I want to go. That's what ends up happening with
recognize it.
But that's what ends up happening with the endorphin rush with law enforcement. And that endorphin rush with law enforcement, coupled with the inability to understand resiliency and wellness skills, leads us to bad decisions. And then you couple that with the bad exposure to trauma. It's the stress from the incident. It's the incident's stress. Not a disorder. You're not mentally completely broken. It's this one incident. It's called post-traumatic stress incident. I have stress from one incident, 12 incidents, 50 incidents. I don't have a disorder. I have these incidents that I haven't either forgiven myself for or talked about or let go. And so I'm compartmentalizing all of this emotional trauma because we're trained, and it's a good skill. We're trained to detach from our emotions, to make valid decisions. It's a good skill at home. Like when I'm in the middle of an argument, if I don't detach, I'm going to say something dumb like, "Hey, relax." Like, I can make another person relax. What is this, massage envy? Like, right. That's
telling me relax.
That's not going to work, right?
It's not. I'm not going to
guarantee the fight, right? Yeah. Like, calm down. What do you mean calm down? How about you calm down, right?
That's what I'm not going to fucking do.
That's right, and that's what our system is based off of, the fact that words and moments matter. Words are powerful.
Right.
So ultimately, I think that you put all that stuff together and you end up recognizing that law enforcement trauma is actually what is responsible for law enforcement poor decision making. And so when we see a police officer that makes a poor decision, I'm going to show you somebody that isn't emotionally well. It's hard because it's subjective. It's really hard to find out what their wellness was before. But when officers are making those crazy decisions, like, for instance, you want to shoot a lady who has a pot of boiling water from 17 feet away because she tries to throw the water on you, which, by the way, which happened in real life like a year ago.
I remember. Didn't he get charged with murder?
He got charged. He just got charged with murder.
Ridiculous.
Right? Ridiculous. That person's not well. He'd been in 2 shootings before in the military. He'd been in the military. And people didn't recognize he wasn't well. I bet you if I went to that agency and spoke to people, they'd say, yeah, that guy was a little bit off at times. He was over aggressive. He was undercaring. He was this, he was that. When I can look at somebody and say, hey, that person has compassion fatigue, that's a big problem, because compassionate people don't get fatigued doing what they like to do.
Right.
Can't get fatigued at being compassionate if you're a compassionate human. But if I'm not compassionate, I have to be compassionate. That'd be like asking me to go bench press 500 pounds. Can't bench press 500 pounds because I don't bench press 500 pounds. But if you ask me to go be compassionate, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to be compassionate AF. I'm going to be as compassionate as can be because that's what I like doing. I'm a compassionate person.
So what is law enforcement agencies, as it's kind of changing the subject a little bit, doing to help with that?
They're doing a lot.
What support? Okay, so that's what I was hoping to hear.
Yeah,
so there is a lot of support there.
They're doing a lot, but they're not doing enough. And when I say that to say this. I don't know if you can run a corporation that's focused first on wellness. You won't succeed. So you have to recognize that there's a lot of focus, and that wellness focus needs to be the focus early on in the corporation's beginnings, because that will build a culture of wellness, and that's what you want. Culture will eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Culture is the move, right? It's like, what are we going to do? Like if I come into this podcast studio and the culture is that everything's set up and ready to go, then everything's set up and ready to go. But if the culture is I could be 5 minutes late, next thing you know, I'll be 10 minutes late. Next thing you know, I'll be 15 minutes late, right? That's a cultural thing because somebody's allowing that to happen. And so the culture is what's important for law enforcement entities to change. And that's very, very hard right now because right now they're very overwhelmed. They're cops are working in LA County sheriffs right now. I got a bunch of friends there. I've had the opportunity to train hundreds of LA County sheriff's deputies in Palmdale and Lancaster and other areas. And people entrust me to help out with this wellness and strategic communication. But if you're being forced to work 18 hours a day for 6 days straight, like now what? So now I get 6 hours and I get to sleep for a little bit. And I'm not sure if 6 days straight is correct, but there's some wild number of how many shifts they can work at 18 hours and 18 hours. And it's called a county double. My sister
at the prison works so many hours. I'm like, stop giving them that much of your life.
That's right.
And you'll never get back.
But if they don't work, the corporation fails. So now the corporation is trying to put wellness first, but they can't because now they have to have bodies and seats in positions, right? A jail can't operate without somebody that operates this and is over there, right? So the streets, if somebody doesn't respond to 911 calls, what happens, right? You call 911 and they say, hey, this number is disconnected. You'd be like, what the?
Right.
So now how do you balance all of that? So what are law enforcement agencies doing? They're doing a lot. Are they doing enough? No. Can they do enough? I don't know. So now you have to hire somebody that's in a well position, and then you have to have a culture of wellness for that person going forward. But what happens? If I'm a field training officer and I've been in this job as a police officer for 15 years and you get in the car and you're happy-go-lucky and you're like, yeah, let's go get the next one. And I'm like, hey, kid, I haven't slept for more than 6 hours in the last 2 weeks and I'm in a broken relationship and my boss is in the middle of writing me up and I like to use the term tweakers. So not Jason, but this guy. So we're going to go to this call where it's going to be another tweaker deal again. Well, how do I maintain my own wellness and not want to just get absorbed by that culture? So now what do I turn into? Now I turn into this guy that's chasing the high, that's morally injuring themselves, that doesn't have the balance, that goes and makes bad decisions. Who's unwell. Right. And what does a hurt person do? A hurt person hurts another person. Yep. And now what do? Now you go chase those highs. And if you don't catch the right highs and the bad things happen and the wrong things happen, unfortunately, you're now met with the ideations that I was met with of suicide. And so a lot of that stuff is happening in law enforcement. And I don't think that that's happening to everyone in law enforcement. But what if 1 in 12 people were encountering what I just described?
That's a lot. That's still a lot.
And I would argue 1 in 12 people aren't dealing with suicidal ideations. But a recent research study said that in a 20-year career, 1 in 12, no, I'm sorry, more than that. It's something like 1 in 6 officers has thought about dying by suicide.
1 in 6.
1 in 6 in their 20-year career, at some point in their career. So you're dealing with all that stuff. I think that conversation can get really dark and make it look like cops are all the bad guys. They're not. Cops are great people. They're hired great. They're amazing humans.
Who do we call when they're
100%. But they make flawed decisions sometimes because of a set of circumstances that they should be pushed to control harder than they're being pushed to control. Like right now, they're having wellness checks for cops. So every year, you have to sit and speak to a peer or a therapist every year, once a year. I mean, I'm in therapy almost every week still since 2010. And it helps me for different reasons, right? Because therapy, I can go and I can be like, hey, you know what? I didn't like this situation. I don't like that person. And nobody gets impacted by it. But if I go to work and I talk about that situation and that person, who gets impacted? That situation and that person.
Of course.
Right? So therapy is this outlet for me to be able to get away from the need for that next endorphin rush. Right?
I love it. I love that
now I can suppress that. And if I suppress that, it now gives me more time before the next threat. Because these are all threats, right? These are all threats to our wellness, our safety, and to other people, to our families. And so it's really thinking about all of those ideas. But I want to make sure that the statement is clear. I think that in any business that is a legal functioning business, the majority of people in those businesses are great people. It doesn't matter what the business. They're great people. And sometimes great people make bad decisions. I truly believe a majority of people are
great people. I'm definitely one of those people that think the majority of the world are great people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely not the glass is half empty. It's always half full. So we have just a couple minutes left. I want you to tell everybody how they can find you on social media. The websites of your business, that sort of thing.
Cool. So on social media, it's Jason Lehman 64.
Okay.
And Team Wisdom. So those are the two social media sites, Jason Lehman 64 and Team Wisdom. The website is wisdom.org.
Okay.
Like Why'd You Stop Me?
Got it.
Wisdom.org. And I think that's probably about it. The thing that people need to know is that if they make it this far in the podcast, right? Which means they're committed to you. They're not committed to me. They're committed to this podcast, which is a great thing, right? And if they're not like subscribing and stuff, they should do that. So, but
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Like and subscribe.
Yes.
Yeah, make it happen. But I think what they need to recognize is that in order for them to be effective in any aspect of their life, they have to become the best versions of themselves. I'm still working on that. I don't know if I'll ever find it. I think it's a quest that I hope I never reach, but we have to continue to work at that. And if there's anything that I can do to help out anybody, whether it be their organization or their school, speaking at a high school or a middle school or anything, I would love to do that because I have a lot of thoughts in my head that I can't get out unless somebody offers me the platform that God's put me on an assignment to have. And so once I can do that, that opportunity is something that I can help other people to get to wherever they want to go. And that's why I believe that I had the opportunity and the blessing to come on this podcast, and is to be able to help people recognize, like, you know what? Most people are good people, and hurt people hurt people. And if they can take away one thing that says, hey, this is what I did today to get 2% better versus, oh, what I just did made me 2% worse, then they're going to stay on track and they're going to make it happen. Right. I tell people, even adults, hey man, if whatever you're doing, you wouldn't do in front of your mom, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's those kinds of things that we think of, like, okay, that's going to remind me, that's going to make it happen. So I'm going to really quickly give a 3-step process on how we can not get into the next argument.
Yeah.
So we'll give it to all I know you deal with entrepreneurs and great people and people that are, in recovery, all different kinds of stuff. But here's the 3-step system. Number 1, in order for us to calm down, we got to tell ourselves we're going to calm down. So we call it de-escalating ourselves first. So that's my first responsibility. If I'm going to try and keep you calm, then I have to calm myself down. It could be as simple as telling you, hey, Lindsey, can you help me relax? Now I'm not telling you what to do. Now you're the helper. Now you have the opportunity to influence me by helping me relax. You can be like, what? What do you, right? The second thing is I have to have a reminder word. And my reminder word is heartbeat. And so if I want to keep people's heart beating in the right way, then I remind myself with a reminder word. Some people might be pineapple or frog, or I don't know, but for me, it's heartbeat. And then the third one is to let my breath be my first word. So anytime I get upset, as long as safety's not jeopardized right away, I literally go, and whatever I was going to say that was stupid, it stays inside my body because now I don't have to say it, and I can say something that's more effective and more realistic and smarter for us to be able to get along with, right? So that's the 3-step system I wanted to leave everybody with, because I feel like there should be a takeaway. It's not should just be a story, right? But stories are cool, but there should be a takeaway too.
Always takeaways.
All right, cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Love you guys. Bye.